Jessica Day was a terrible friend to Cece when Schmidt cheated on her, is our first new girl fan theory today. I'm gonna read out loud 5 juicy fan theories I found on Reddit and let you know how I feel about them, and I want you to let me know how you feel about them over in the comments. By the way, my name is Kira, this is Studio Violet, and if you like breaking down TV shows like this, definitely hit subscribe. I'm mainly talking about the early episodes in season 3 when Cece finds out that Schmidt was cheating on her. I expected the next few episodes after that to be about Jess being there for her best friend Cece, but I never saw that. I'm surprised how Jess still stayed friends with Schmidt. There was no anger, no frustration, nothing. She even came up with an idea on how to cheer him up in episode 6 because she didn't like seeing him sad. Her friend got cheated on, but the cheater is the priority. The episodes up to that point had been about feeling sympathy for Schmidt and not the other female main character that he hurt. It's ridiculous because the plot wants us to like Schmidt so bad, it makes every character bend to his will. All he does is throw a hissy fit like a little child even though he's in the wrong. And I definitely did not like that. I don't like when TV shows normalize cheating. That's why I stopped watching Grey's Anatomy, because the amount of times that McDreamy would be like, I had to kiss this nurse to find out how much I loved you, Meredith. I'm like, shut up. No, you didn't. I definitely did not like that part too. And I wish that there could have been another thing that Cece and Schmidt went through in order for them to then like have a stronger relationship at the end rather than him cheating on. I did not like that. I agree. So some comments. She's trying to be a good friend to both. Jess loves her friends. That's a pretty major character trait for her throughout the series. She's not going to abandon her friendship with Schmidt because she loves him, and forgiving people is easy when you love them. I think her living with Schmidt also played a part, someone else says, which I agree. Like, if you're not living with them, I would not have as much grace, but living with people is such a different dynamic. Some other folks are saying, I agree, she tries to be there for all of them, even when it's not the best or ends up toxic at times. It's who Jess is. It reminds me of that quote where, I don't remember who she was talking to. Maybe she was talking to Fawn Moscato, where she's like, do you care what people think? And she's like, oh my God, it's all I do, or something like that. Like she cares what people think. She wants people to like her. That's what makes her adorable, and that's what makes her really relatable. Especially when I watched it the first time. I was in high school, and if you're also people pleaser like me, especially in high school, that shit eats you alive. Someone else brings up a really good point. She seemed to try to be there for her, but Cece shut her out. I did forget about that. So she was being a good friend by respecting her wishes to be left alone. This commenter is saying, I've been cheated on and I also isolated. I needed to process my feelings on my own. It's how some people cope, and I appreciate that my friends gave me space. And yeah, a lot of people are saying like Cece wanted space and Jess respected her wishes. As far as I remember, Jess didn't let Schmidt forget she was angry at him for cheating on her best friend. Someone else has a different point of view. They say, I hate that Schmidt gets so much hate for that storyline. He should never have been told he has to make a decision on the spot. Nobody thought about him in that moment and what he would be going through in making a decision like that. I know it's TV, but man, that was lazy writing. I don't know, he was cheating. Like, I'm sorry, if you can't make a decision, don't cheat. Just don't be with anyone. And someone else says, this was not him being malicious and going out intentionally to deceive 2 girls. This was him suddenly being presented with an impossible choice and not communicating to the both of them that he needed more time and space to make a decision. That being said, I disagree with the lazy writing. I thought the storyline was really interesting and it gave us some great Nick Miller quotes. You got one wife! It's the way the world works! And yeah, I mean, it's definitely different and nuanced. Obviously, if we want to look at it from a bird's eye perspective, like he was cheating. He was cheating. That's what happened. Plain and simple, he was cheating. If we want to look at it a little deeper, it was one of those instances where it wasn't like he was with someone and then he had like a wandering eye. It was like there were 2 decisions and kind of both of them happened, and he definitely shouldn't have done what he did, but it was a different situation where he wasn't like actively trying to pursue someone else. Well, like they both happened at the same time and he didn't say no. And that is still cheating. That's still cheating. But it's just like a different thing that happened. Like at the end of the day, it is a sitcom. It is not like the one way that we all should be living. It is not, I don't think, glorifying any of that. I wish there was a slightly better way that was done, like that Schmidt didn't have to like go through this to realize that he loved Cece, because especially like I wasn't convinced that Elizabeth, like yes, Elizabeth was like one of his first girlfriends, but he had been obsessed with Cece. Nothing had been in his way from that. And then Elizabeth coming on and him being like, I'm suddenly so confused. I'm like, boy, you weren't confused like with every other situation ever. Like, no, that personally wasn't convincing for me. I don't agree. I don't think Jess was a bad friend. I think this is about Schmidt and his decisions. I think Jess respected Cece's wishes As much as Jess like really wants to do stuff, she's like, I want to mend this. I want things to be right. I want things to be back the way they were. Cece was like, I don't want that. No, I need space. And she respected that. And I forgot that too. So I disagree. I do not think Jess was bad friend. Fan theory number 2 is that Nick is better than literally everyone, especially Jim Halpert from The Office. So if you know The Office, Jim Halpert's the guy who's always pranking Dwight, who's with Pam eventually, and is always putting like his stapler in Jell-O. And there's this diagram that is literally just like Nick better than basically everybody, including Jim Halpert. This is the most obvious take of all time, apparently, which I had never heard before, but now we are. So let's talk about it. And probably like the best answer to this is, I mean, this isn't really a conversation, right? I don't think Jim would get you cookie if you gave him cookie. There's this interesting correlation that both Nick Miller and Jim Halpert are both these like guys who are kind of a mess, but they got the spirit. They're very stagnant career-wise, and it has a negative effect on their social intelligence and maturity. That's more talking about Jim. With Nick, he's more okay with his lot in life. He's terrible with money. He's uncommunicative. He's messy. They're both really interesting to watch. At the end of the day, it's a sitcom and they're funny. This particular person would choose Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec, and I actually have not finished the series, and now like none of my streaming platforms have it. So, but he seems very sweet from what I remember. And someone said, okay, so I definitely see why Nick is preferable. I love his personality, but I can't with his hygiene. It's a massive turnoff, but I'd love him as a friend or my best friend. I don't see myself with Jim. I've always been a Schmidt girl. I'm Indian. Literally like the best scene of all time is the first time that Nick and Jess kiss, and you're just like, oh my God, that's so good. Like, it's so good. But then you see that scene where like him and Jess are sharing a bedroom and he's wearing that big t-shirt. He looks like just like a 1700s like orphan who would have like a candlestick. And then you see his feet. So those are the moments where you're really like, ooh, that TV magic, that movie magic, with that like scene with Nick and Jess where you're like, oh my gosh, it couldn't get hotter than that. And then you see and then you see Nick just with those like dirty ass feet, and you're like, yeah, no, it could get worse. So some people are like, I would prefer Jim because at least he's not dirty like Nick. But like Nick, you know, Nick is a curmudgeon a little bit. He's like a angry old man. But then Jim, it's like he knows better, but he's just complacent. So like agreed that there is that element of like Jim's just being a jerk. Like he's just being a jerk. At least Nick, it's like he was born out of the womb as a curmudgeon. He was born as a kid being like, get off my lawn. So it's like, that's who he is. Like, take it or leave it. Someone says, yeah, like I would love Nick as a friend, but I would choose Jim between the two of them. Jim holds down a job and lives a pretty reasonable adult life. Nick has very bad hygiene and has the credit score of a homeless ghost. Nick Miller from the streets of Chicago. I mean, how can you not love that? Someone says, if we're gonna judge Jim by real life standards, then we'll have to do the same for Nick. Nick is an absolute loser, and if anybody ever posted on the internet describing Nick, everyone would say break up immediately with this scrub. He's barely even a good friend most of the time. He's straight up unhygienic. He's messy, dirty, rude, purposefully broke as fuck, and constantly leeching off his friends because he doesn't feel like getting a job. In general, he's an inconsiderate asshole and bullies his friends just as much as Jim bullies Dwight. At least Jim is an actual functioning human being. To be clear, I love Nick as a sitcom character, but y'all need to be so for real. In real life, Nick sucks ass. But then someone says Nick is kind. I don't remember him ever being mean on purpose. Jim is mean constantly. I guess the ultimate question is, would you rather like a kind loser, aka Nick, or like a stagnant kind of asshole, but he's at least responsible, which is Jim? So that's up to you. For me, I just don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't really think about stuff like that. Like, I am in a relationship and I'm not just like, would I choose this or that? I don't know. I think it's really just a matter of they're not great options, I'll tell you that. And I feel like me personally, I like just remembering Nick for like those scenes with Nick and Jess where you're like, oh my gosh, they finally kissed. And then like the Lord song playing as he's running into the elevator. Like, that's how I want to remember Nick, okay? That's how I'm going to think about Nick. And Jim, I appreciate his pranks. They make me laugh. I'm not going to think about it past that. But if you have a very strong reaction about who you would date, leave it in the comments. Let's have a conversation. Fan theory number 3 is that this Winston joke is the best in the entire series. It is when they are in the desert. I believe it's when Nick is about to move in with Caroline, but then he throws the keys. Winston goes, I'm worried about Schmidt. He's a Jew in the desert. I don't want him to wander. Now, some people argue that that is not, in fact, the best Winston line, that it's him finding out he's colorblind. And Schmidt saying, if you think your shoes are brown, what color do you think you are? I didn't finish the series, but it's called Happy Endings, and I believe it was the reason why Damon Wayans Jr. wasn't able to continue on with New Girl and why Winston kind of replaced him, because he was a part of the cast of Happy Endings. It was running about the same time as New Girl, and it was a very similar concept. Like, these people live together, there's like dynamics amongst the friend group, but I love the actors. It's so funny, it's so good. I don't think it got as much traction as New Girl. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe like you can only have one of those shows on at a certain time, but I highly recommend that. If you love New Girl and you're looking for a show to watch, definitely watch that one. Someone says, for me, it's that line, the wandering Jew in the desert. And what do you think the puzzle's gonna look like, Schmidt? It's a Japanese garden. It's on the box. Somewhere in this Reddit group or something like that, and it was just like, it was like a pictureless puzzle. And someone was like, oh my gosh, like Winston and Schmidt need to do this because it's a puzzle, but you don't even know what the picture is. You just have to figure it out. And people adding to Winston's jokes, hey, did you guys hear about the 2 black guys and the 2 white guys that went into the police station? The 2 white guys came out. He has such a funny delivery, and from the lore that I know about New Girl, there's probably so much more, but like, you know, he kind of came in last minute thinking Damon Wayans Jr. was going to be that character, and then they brought in Winston, and like, I think partly why he was like the funny enigma that he was, production team was like, yeah, we need to replace this guy, and we have very little time, and we just like need to, here he is, like, you know, he can't be Coach, and I don't know if they knew that Coach might come back, and so they can't necessarily like replace him, that like Winston was going to be the coach, but I think they did say, you know, he was like part of like a Latvian basketball team or something, so they did include that athleticism in there somewhere, but it just plays so well into the lore that he's so random. It's like he comes from this Latvian basketball team, but then he's like trying to get a job and he doesn't know what's going on, and then like he hates cats and he wants to kill the cat, but then he has a cat and he's a cat person, and then he's weird and then becomes a cop. Like, all the lore is so good and he delivers it so well. And back to the wandering Jew joke, someone comments and says, as a Jewish person myself, I must praise that line of perfect Jewish humor and comedy. Yeah, I mean, Winston one-liners overall, this is such a good one, just depending on what your humor is. Like, I can't even pick which ones are my favorite. I will just constantly throughout the day just be like, puzzling, Winston is about to do some puzzling, even if I'm not puzzling and my name is obviously not Winston. It's just so good. And like, you can't have humor like that if you don't have a team, I would imagine, that just like lets you be yourself. I'm so curious if that was written into, I would imagine like the wandering Jew line is, but like Winston singing to himself about puzzling, how was that written in the script? Was it literally puzzling, Winston is about to do some puzzling? Was it Winston is singing about puzzling? Was it not at all and he just started singing and they were like, keep that? Like, these are the things that keep me up at night, and this is why I can't wait to become an actor in the entertainment industry, because like, that's the stuff I want to be a part of. Like, when I did theater, I love stuff like that, and I would love to get my hands on a script. I don't know like what the copyright laws are with things like that, but at some point I would love to read a script aloud. I actually do that with the pilot episode of Girls. If you watch Girls, I have it linked right above if you want to go ahead and watch that. But yeah, like, I need to know if I'm allowed to do that. I don't really have copies of it, but I just feel like it would be so funny to see what is actually improv and what is in there, and what are the things that someone said once, and then the director was like, ooh, do that again. And then maybe it became something even bigger. Thinking about Nick's, like, gave you cookie, got me cookie. I think he was literally just tripping over his words and he just leaned in on it, and everyone's like, great, love it, we'll keep it in, you know? I love learning about things like that. And if you do too, definitely stay around, because that's what I like to create a space here, is like, we're breaking down amazing parts of a show and being like, what is that? Fan theory number 4 is that Nadia is the best side character ever. And we just have like a screen grab right here where she has like her coat over and she's like, I shake this thing that my mama gave me. There's no other way to say that than the way she did it, with just like a straight face and just enunciating every word, because she could barely speak English anyway. McMouse, Jew in couch. Why don't you get in your spaceship like McMouse? And Schmidt goes, honey, here in America, he's earthbound. And honestly, people are just like riffing their favorite Nadia lines, which I am here for. Ice skating for fun, not to save life. I think a lot of those lines must have been improv because when I watch the bloopers, and I wish I could play bloopers, but a lot of them are copyright protected, so I can't play them here. But there are bloopers when she's riffing on things and Schmidt is just cracking up. Like, he just cannot keep a straight face. And that makes me wonder, like, is that because she's just throwing random things in there and he's like, what? And she just goes, strawberry, Vilma la Drama. And then it's like if she riffed Wilder Valderrama, but then later on she actually thinks she's with Wilmer Valderrama. Like, how much are these actors riffing and the director is like, oh my God, yes, okay, we're gonna include that in the plot line, you know? A great example of this is in Girls, if you haven't seen it, where Judd Apatow is very improv heavy. And so what he'll have actors do is, you know, go into the scene and change this one line every time you do it. And there are a lot of moments where they will include that changed line. And the direction that Andrew Reynolds was given was like, comment about Hannah's dad, the actor, on like what he looks like. And he's just like, he's gay, he's got an earring in his ear. And they not only kept that improv in, but then the plot line actually unfolds that he is gay. So that's what makes me so curious about these lines. It's like, did the improv then drive a part of it? I mean, I hear from producers all the time and writers all the time that, like, you know, once the actors come in and a season happens, they're writing towards those actors, of course, because now they have someone to fill those shoes. I'm going to name baby, because it's funny. I like his face. I want to punch. Yeah, so everyone basically keeps commenting their favorite Nadia lines, and it just goes to show that, like, you don't need to be a main character to be so memorable. Oh my God, and she actually commented in this thread and she said, hey guys, Rebecca here, aka Nadia. Love reading your comments. I'm doing behind the scenes on IG. Here's the latest from today. Would love to hear in the comments what else you would like to know. And she actually posted on Instagram, she has a live at Rebecca Ballantine Reed where she talks about her experience on New Girl. So definitely follow her if you want to follow along. I will be doing that as well. Fan theory number 5 is that Jess's alternatives to intercourse are exceptional. And specifically, you gotta like have watched the show a few times. Maybe you're pausing to go to the bathroom and you know those moments where you just pause something and you're like, I never noticed that in the set. Well, apparently someone did that on a rewatch and paused it. This is exceptional. It is when she's teaching and she has on the blackboard behind her alternatives to intercourse. And I'll read them out loud if you're listening. Get to know a neighbor, tick or lice check, change your email password, look at pics of STDs, write a convict. That's my favorite. Write a convict. Like if you still want that edge of badassery, but you don't want to like be at risk of getting pregnant, meet a friend for decaf. Not caffeine, decaf. Watch Friday Night Lights. Side note, I always wonder who the people are who are writing these because, like, I do not feel like that is Jess's handwriting at all. Her handwriting has to be so much more bubbly. That was definitely like a production assistant or something. And someone in the comments goes, chicken lice check? That sounds counterproductive. Yeah, that's a slippery slope for a tick and lice check to, something you cannot reverse. Someone says, meet a friend for decaf is sending me because it's so random. Because she knows kids shouldn't have caffeine. I love when there's just comments that are just about this scene. So there's a bunch like, did you just curtsy? Or like, give my best to Mrs. Monogamy. Someone said there's a Brad Paisley song where he uses I want to check you for ticks as a euphemism for having sex. What? I hate that. I hate that so much. I don't know why. And yeah, many comments that I love that she specifies decaf. Caffeine is almost as scandalous as sex is exactly. And this is the beauty of rewatching shows that, you know, the first time you're watching it, honestly, to figure out if you like it and then to actually figure out what's going on. The second time being reminded of really funny moments. Once you get like 3+, you're just like, okay, what are the things that I have just, if I can pause and I can look at all of the intention the set designer put behind this. And, you know, as somebody who's an aspiring performer, I feel like it's helping me manifest more of this. We're watching these shows and they're 25, 30 minutes and the hours and hours and hours that they put in, not only to being on set, but preparing for it and the set design and purchasing these items and situating them in the exact right spot. And This is the beauty that, AI can never replace, the process of it and understanding the behind the scenes, which is why I love breaking down moments in shows like this. I want to show you what the process is like to make things like this, because I know that you guys are also interested in this, You love laughing about it, but we also love being a part of it. And breaking down little funny, trivial things like this makes us a part of the greater conversation of why it's so important for humans to make things, and the experience of it, and the community that's created behind it, and all the stories, and the podcast that can be made from people who were on the set and who can tell us, just like stories from our ancestors, this is how it was, this is how things are changing. I mean, the amount of podcasts, like girls' characters being interviewed, the Office Rewatch podcast, the New Girl podcast. I'm currently listening to Pretty Little Liars True Crime podcast, where cast members will talk about their experience and then they'll also break down the true crime. Like, this is the beauty of human-made stuff, guys. By watching things like this, by being interested in things like this, you are part of the solution, of the fascination behind human psychology and why people just love entertainment. Now, going back to our whole Jim and Nick conversation, if you do frequently love to watch The Office, I just did an Office breakdown exactly like this one with some juicy fan theories. So go ahead and watch that next. If you haven't subscribed, definitely do that. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time, friend. Bye.